The operating theater aboard the Meridian compact medical cruiser smelled of antiseptic compounds and quiet desperation. Senior physician Vroth pressed 3 of her 4 hands flat against the transparent observation panel and watched the human bleed. It was not a metaphor. The male Sergeant First Class Daniel Reyes, according to the datapad clipped to her wrist, was bleeding in 17 distinct locations, and the medical scanner above his body was updating its estimate of internal hemorrhage volume faster than her clinical mind could process. The numbers climbed. The numbers kept climbing. "He should be dead," said intern Quellish from behind her left shoulder. The young Thorathi's voice carried the flat, clinical register of someone who had not yet learned to fear that sentence. "He will be," said Vroth, "if we do nothing." She turned from the glass. The Meridian Compact had responded to a distress beacon near the Kelvar debris field, and what her retrieval team had found inside the shattered hull of a human patrol vessel was this: one survivor, pinned beneath collapsed superstructure, conscious for the first 17 minutes of extraction, and somehow still breathing through 2 compromised lung lobes. Somehow still trying to give them his unit designation. As if that mattered. As if any protocol in the galaxy required a dying man to identify himself before accepting help. "Standard coagulant matrix?" Quellish offered. "Incompatible. His blood chemistry refuses our clotting agents." Vroth was already moving toward the preparation bay. "I checked the xenobiology index on the transit here. Human blood operates on an iron-based hemoglobin system. Our coagulants were synthesized for copper-based and silicon fluid analogs. We apply standard treatment, we accelerate the hemolysis." Quellish followed her, tablet in hand. "Then, what do we do?" Vroth stopped in front of the fluid synthesis cabinet and pulled it open. Rows of crystalline cylinders caught the white light and threw it in pale arcs across the ceiling. She found what she was looking for on the 3rd shelf. Nanofluid suspension, XT9 medical grade. She set it on the prep counter. Originally designed for Vorath burn casualties. The nanites are inert until introduced to a living vascular system. Then they read the host's biochemistry and begin adaptive repair sequencing. Quellish stared at the cylinder. "That was never tested on humans." "No," Vroth agreed. "It was not. I... A silence settled between them. Through the wall, the medical scanner chimed its quiet alarm again. "Senior physician," Quellish said carefully. "If the nanites misread his biology, then he dies from our intervention instead of from his wounds." Vroth picked up the cylinder and walked back toward the theater. "He is already dying from his wounds. I need you to help me. Not remind me of things I already know." The procedure took 4 hours and 11 minutes. Vroth had performed nanofluid transfusions 8 times before all Vorath, all under controlled circumstances, all with pre-indexed biochemical data loaded into the nanite suspension before introduction. She had none of that here. She fed the XT9 into Reyes's vascular system raw, with nothing but a prayer to whatever indifferent mechanism governed the universe, and she watched. The nanites did what they were designed to do. They entered the bloodstream, and they listened. That was the only word she had ever found adequate for it: listening. The suspension clouded faintly in the transparent tubing as the nanites sampled the chemical environment around them. Billions of microscopic processes running in parallel, constructing a map of a biology no Vorath engineer had ever imagined. Hemoglobin. Platelets. The complex enzymatic cascade of human clotting factors, damaged and overwhelmed, but present, the architecture still intact beneath the chaos. Vroth watched the first injury site on her scanner. A laceration across the left trapezius muscle, 4 centimeters deep. It had been weeping blood at a steady rate since the extraction. She watched the scanner's bleed indicator. She watched it, slow. "Quellish," she said quietly. "I see it." The bleed slowed further. Stopped. Vroth allowed herself a breath. The nanites moved through him like a repair crew, discovering a structure they had never seen before, and choosing, intelligently, practically, to fix it anyway. They did not know human biology. They had never been told about human biology. But the information was there, in the cells themselves, in every damaged capillary, every torn muscle fiber. And the nanites were patient, and they were thorough, and they did not stop. Injury Site 2. Closed. Site 7. Closed. The internal hemorrhage in the abdominal cavity, the one the scanner had flagged as unsurvivable at standard intervention rates, began to slow around the second hour. By the third hour, it had stopped entirely. By the fourth, the scanner reported nanite activity in the lung tissue, threading through the compromised lobes, sealing microtears that no surgical instrument aboard the cruiser was precise enough to reach. Vrath stood through all of it. She did not sit down. She did not think that was something she deserved. Reyes woke 14 hours after the procedure ended. Vrath was writing case notes at the terminal beside his recovery pod when she heard the change in his breathing, the shift from deep, unconscious rhythm to something more deliberate, more aware. She looked up. His eyes were open. They were brown, she noted, darker than she had expected from his skin tone, and they moved with an alertness that surprised her. He looked at the ceiling first, then at the equipment around him, then at her. "Hospital?" he said. His voice was rough from the intubation. "Medical cruiser," she said. "You were recovered from your vessel approximately 22 hours ago." He processed that. His right hand moved to his own chest, pressing lightly, feeling something. "The pain's different," he said. Different how? "Less." He said it like it confused him. "A lot less. You were in significant systemic trauma. We administered a nanofluid suspension to support your vascular repair. The nanites are still active. They will continue working for approximately another 72 hours before metabolizing harmlessly." He turned his head to look at her more directly. "Nanites. Microscopic synthetic repair units. They read your biology, and I know what nanites are." He wasn't sharp about it, just clarifying. "I mean, you put alien nanites in my blood." "Yes, because your blood was incompatible with our standard coagulants, and you were dying at a rate that precluded other options." He was quiet for a moment. She waited to see what he would do with that. In her experience, patients moved through a predictable sequence when confronted with emergency medical decisions made on their behalf, without consent, disorientation, indignation, negotiation. She had prepared her explanations. Reyes looked at the ceiling again. "They working?" he asked. She checked her tablet. "Wound closure across all 17 injury sites is currently at 91%. Your internal hemorrhage has resolved. The lung tissue repair is approximately 60% complete." "Huh," he exhaled, slowly. "My blood feel weird to them?" The question stopped her. She considered it for a moment and found, to her faint surprise, that she was smiling or doing the facial equivalent that her species allowed. "I have no way to interface with their sensory data," she said. "But I suspect your biology was considerably more interesting than what they were designed for." He made a sound she interpreted as a laugh, though it came out short and tired. "You could have let me go," he said. "Easier, probably. Unknown alien? Experimental procedure? Easier." "Yes," she said simply. He looked at her again. "Why didn't you?" She set down her tablet. She had thought about how to answer this if he asked, on the long, quiet watch hours while the nanites worked. She had composed something careful and appropriately clinical. She looked at Sergeant First Class Daniel Reyes, his torn hands, his bandaged torso, the thin evidence of a body that had simply refused to stop, and she chose something honest instead. "Because you were still trying to give me your unit designation," she said, "when we pulled you out. You were under 2 tons of collapsed hull, bleeding from 17 wounds, and you were trying to make sure we had your paperwork correct." She picked up her tablet. "It seemed to me that a person like that deserved the more difficult choice." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Sergeant First Class Daniel Reyes, 4th Interstellar Patrol, hull number—" "I have it," she said. "Just making sure." She left him to sleep, and she went back to her case notes. And she wrote in careful clinical language about the XT9 suspension and the adaptive nanite response, and the observed recovery curve across 17 wound sites. She wrote nothing about the way the scanner numbers had climbed and kept climbing, or the 4 hours she had stood without sitting, or the precise moment the bleeding had stopped. Some data, she had decided, was better kept in the physician.